you, Pericles. Wow, that was you got the whole story of my life now. That's all there is to know. Yes, so I actually launched Lunar Massage 5 years ago, like yesterday or something. We're at the 5-year anniversary around this time of year. And as you said, I'm coming up on about 15 employees right now. I really wanted to start a business once I was kind of getting done doing fundraising stuff in DC. Had no idea what I should start a business in because I had no real skills. So I just thought, what is something that I could do just a little bit better than the way that it's currently being done? And I'd had a few massages and thought they were kind of weird and a little creepy and wasn't really sure why it was so hard and so expensive to get it done. So I did not spend very much time thinking about what it was going to be. I just started looking for a lease and signed one and hung out my sign and started on a terrifying path that leads me to where I am today. So one of the biggest things I try to encourage people on when they want to start a business is don't spend that much time researching it. It may sound counterintuitive, but I think people spend a lot of time thinking and coming up with PowerPoint decks and lots of different complicated ways to describe what their product is going to be. But that's mostly just wasted time. So a business plan is only so good as I think to just focus your own thoughts. So to really think about who your competition is, what are you doing that's slightly better, slightly different from what is currently being offered, projections on what you could earn, but they're all going to be probably false. And then just go for it, because if you keep thinking about it, you're never going to get to where you need to be. There's nothing that disciplines you and bathes you in the fire like actually getting someone to pay you for what you do. So unless you get customers, you have no idea what your product will even end up being. So I think for me, the only thing I wanted to contribute to the massage industry was making it easier to consume and a little bit less expensive. So same-day appointments, very simple menu, not as opaque, not as weird. The modalities are confusing. I stripped away all of that and was like, here's a massage, 30 minutes, it's $38, go for it. And I listened to what customers said. And as they came in, they trickled in and they would tell me what they thought about it, or they would interact with my therapist. So I rapidly evolved the product based on what I was hearing from other people. There's nothing, no amount of thinking, no amount of research, no amount of due diligence will get you to that, hearing from the people who are giving you the money for what you are offering. So I really encourage people. I was reading a lot of Fast Company and Inc. magazine at the time, and the big mantra out of Silicon Valley is get version 1.0 out there, right? So even for my super brick and mortar, old school, labor-based business like massage, I use that as a metaphor of just get version 1.0 out there as quickly as possible and rapidly evolve it. And the good thing about retail and things where people actually pay you as opposed to the tech firms, getting users means you are actually getting money too. So you don't have to get 100,000 users that aren't paying you for anything and then hope that they switch over to premium services. So for me, I was able to earn some dollars and interact with my customers and refine the product, refine the message, and every dollar I earned was the dollar I spent on the next thing to evolve the company. So it's really important to just get out there what you're trying to do and rapidly evolve based on what you're hearing from your customers. That would be the most important thing I'd have to say about launching.
Okay, great. Can you talk a little bit about some of the first challenges that you faced when you were actually going through that launch process? What can people expect to have to put up with or to persevere through?
I would assume that not everything is a challenge. Everything is hard. It's all much, much harder than you think it's going to be. And you just have to get used to everything going wrong and fixing it. I think you don't need an MBA, you don't need any particular training. The main skill you have to have is problem solving, because everything will be a problem. So learn how to think about 8 creative ways to solve whatever obstacle you're up against. And I think I've always considered myself a creative person and a problem solving person, but I had no idea how much you had to be able to do that until I got into it and had to solve 1,000 things a day. And I think it actually rewires your brain once you get into that mode, when before, you run up against something at your house and you're like, I don't know how to fix that. I guess it just won't get fixed, or I'll call somebody. Now I'm obsessed. If anything goes wrong, I'm I'm going to figure this out. And nothing's going to keep me from my solution. And it gets to be a little bit obsessive. But I think it does force you to really think, because as an employee, what can you do? You can say, oh, sorry, boss, I couldn't figure this out. sorry, right? Like you can kind of kick the ball to somebody else because it's not ultimately your responsibility. But if everything about your project is ultimately your responsibility, there's no one to pass the buck on to. So you have to figure it out, and if it's beyond your capacity, you have to find someone who can help you figure it out, or outsource it to someone who can, or whatever. There is no just like, sorry, I can't figure that out. So that will really discipline you to like keep pushing forward, because when you create something, it does not exist without you pushing it forward. It takes a long time to get to the point where it kind of has its own momentum. So you have to keep pushing it and pushing it all the time, and it's exhausting, especially in the startup phase. So everything will be a challenge, particularly people if you're going to have employees, but we can talk about that more when we talk about management.
Yeah, absolutely. And so kind of transitioning us to the next topic, when did you feel that you had finally been to a point where, okay, you can take it a little bit easy and things are moving themselves a little bit? Did that happen, or does that never happen?
Yeah, no, it does happen. I like to use the metaphor of expansion and contraction. I was talking to Marty earlier about this. I think for me, creating a project, it is essentially a creative act, right? It is like a godlike act. You are creating order out of chaos. Like nothing in the universe says that this project should work. There is no law that says like if you do this and you have good feelings about it, that it'll work. Everything in the universe is working against that, and it's supposed to be chaotic and disorderly and not to work. You're not supposed to be able to coordinate people and technology and merchant services and marketing and all of those things. It should not work. So for it to work is kind of miraculous. So I think if you have the perspective of the problem solving and if you're able to keep all of that in your mind all the time, then you'll be able to make it work. And at some point, it will develop its own life form and kind of be moving without you. So it took me probably 3.5 years. It took me getting a good number 2, which I was not blessed to have when I started Lunar Massage. So I launched by myself. Clay's got the benefit of an excellent co-founder.
But
Marty,
it hasn't
you had a
gotten
co-founder.
easy yet.
We're at 3 years, so in 6 months.
That's right, you'll be fine. You'll be totally fine.
Great.
So if you have a co-founder, then that's really, that helps to take some of that burden off of you. My big hero, if you want to read anyone who writes stuff about this, Paul Graham. He's a famous VC guy out of Silicon Valley, actually angel investing. But he has an essay called Startups in 13 Sentences, which saved my life in the first 6 months. So if you read anything, write down Paul Graham's name. He's got a great blog where he writes his essays. But he writes about how he doesn't even like to fund companies that don't have co-founders, because his specific advice is based on the fact that it is so psychologically, spiritually, mentally exhausting. You can't do it by yourself. You have to be able to do it because you don't want to let your buddy down, or you have to be able to defer to somebody else because you'll be so strung out and exhausted you can't make good decisions anymore. So that's specifically why he recommends that. I didn't have that. Once I had a really good number 2, then I was able to feel a lot stronger about how the company was. Now there's 3 of us in the management team, and it's phenomenal. It's so nice after having done it by myself for so many years. So there is a point where it can take on a life of its own, but it takes a lot of energy to get there.